Hello and welcome to another Jarvis in the TARDIS video, and today to a new series of videos on the channel on the Virgin New Adventures line of Doctor Who books that started in 1991. Today we will be covering the very first Doctor Who New Adventure, Timewyrm Genesys by John Peel. Now these are becoming very hard to find, these books, so they're getting a little bit pricey, but I am acquiring them as I go, and I'm beginning with the very first one as I'm starting to read them in sequential order. I've read a few out of order, but we will get to them as we get to them. So we're going to start with the very first one. However, I would first like to give you an introduction into how this line even exists, where it comes from, and why I think you should maybe give them a read if you're a big Doctor Who fan. So the Virgin New Adventures comes from Virgin Publishing, who had the license to do Doctor Who novels around the time of the late 1980s as they acquired Target Books, who did all of the Target novelizations of the actual television stories. Now, when Virgin acquired them in the late 1980s, they continued to novelize any of the Doctor Who stories that had not been novelized, including some of the stories that were missing from Series 23, like the Nightmare Fair, which was going to be a Celestial Toymaker story that never got to actually be produced for the TV show. But when the show was cancelled in 1989, after Survival, they approached the BBC and asked for the license to do original Doctor Who novels, and they got granted it. And so the Virgin New Adventures line began. It carried on all the way into 1996 when the Doctor Who TV movie aired. The BBC decided to bring all Doctor Who licensing back in-house, and they felt that they could do their own line of Doctor Who books, which they did do. There's some down there, which are the BBC books. I will probably end up doing some videos on them at some point as well. However, they did actually continue doing New Adventures books, but with one of the original companions that was introduced in these books, Bernice Summerfield. They ended up continuing that for another 3 years. That character was so popular that it managed to at least maintain sales, but unfortunately, as you'd expect, the line did die down. Sales did die down, because it's quite hard to do Doctor Who without the Doctor, you know. That's just how it goes. However, this is what the series is going to be about. I'm going to be doing a sort of a short review of this book, give you a sort of short plot synopsis, and how much I enjoyed it. So, let's get started. Timewyrm Genesys is part of a 4-book series to start off the Virgin New Adventures, known as the Timewyrm Tetralogy. Now for a short plot synopsis. The story takes place in ancient Mesopotamia, with Gilgamesh, the king of men, at the helm of the city of Uruk. He encounters a fallen cybernetic queen who has crashed from space, who changes form to resemble the goddess Ishtar. She tries to persuade the king to join her, but she hasn't the power to leave her life pod. He rejects her, fearing trickery. She swears revenge. The Doctor, in the TARDIS, accidentally wipes Ace's memories while trying to clean out some of his own using the TARDIS's telepathic circuits. He manages to restore her memories, but in doing so triggers an apparition of the 4th Doctor, warning him about a creature called the Timewyrm. He cannot remember it. However, the TARDIS takes control and forces them to land on Earth. They meet Gilgamesh and his friend Enkidu, who are in a battle against the warriors of the neighbouring city of Kish. The Doctor and Ace are taken for gods, join Gilgamesh and co to spy on Kish. This is where the Doctor notices odd copper patterns on the walls of Kish, which are out of place for the time period. It turns out Ishtar has now taken refuge in Kish after meeting a priest of the goddess. She is controlling the servants of Ishtar via implants, the Doctor discovers. However, in doing so, he is captured, but is saved by Ace using Nitro-9 explosives. This tips Ishtar off to the otherworldly nature of the two travellers. She orders the King of Kish, Aga, to hasten completion of the copper patterns on the walls, as they will constitute a radio transmitter to let her spread her control across the entire world. She also has a cobalt bomb, which is tied to her biosignature, which will detonate and destroy Earth if she dies. She used a similar device to destroy her home planet of Anu. After the Doctor's escape, they discover that in the mountains there are people of another world, one named Utnapishtim, who the Doctor theorizes is an enemy of Ishtar thanks to the musician Avram previously discovering this, and sends Ace, Gilgamesh and Avram to recruit him, while the Doctor and others return to Kish. Ace is not thrilled due to her having to fight off Gilgamesh's constant sexual advances. In the mountains, they find that the Doctor is indeed correct. Utnapishtim is the leader of a space-going ark, all that is left of the people of Anu. However, the power source is failing due to the damage on the ship. Utnapishtim does agree, however, to help Ace. He has a computer virus, which should destroy Ishtar, whom he reveals is a cybernetic life form. However, when they all converge on the temple, Ishtar manages to smash the device with the virus, but is infected anyway when she hits Ace with an implant. The device was in fact a decoy, and the real virus has been overlaid on their minds. However, the Doctor realises the cobalt bomb will detonate if she dies. The Doctor takes the bomb and heads with Ace to the TARDIS. He then, using the telepathic circuits, manages to link the bomb to a copy of Ishtar via the implant that she tried to use on Ace, giving him the extra time required to defuse it. However, Ishtar infects the TARDIS through the copy. The Doctor manages to bluff that the life support of the TARDIS is controlled through the secondary console. She takes the bait, and then he jettisons the infected components. The Doctor helps repair Utnapishtim's ship with the cobalt bomb as a new power source. He then directs them to a suitable uninhabited world where they can re-establish civilization. Back in the TARDIS, the Doctor and Ace are attacked when they enter the vortex. Ishtar is in fact not dead, as she has merged with the ejected TARDIS components and has become the dreaded Timewyrm. She is now free to roam all of time and space. The Doctor sets course after her, tracking the parts of the TARDIS inside her, vowing to destroy her. And that is a very brief plot synopsis of Timewyrm Genesys. So, what are my thoughts on Timewyrm Genesys by John Peel? Now, my thoughts overall, I really enjoyed this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's paced really well. I think John Peel has a real good knack of not sort of over-explaining stuff. The action keeps pace. He doesn't dwell too much on things where they don't need to be over-explained or unnecessary detail. I think it's really good. It's only 230 pages, so this book didn't take me that long to read. I know some of the later New Adventures are a lot larger. Things like Sky Pirates by Dave Stone, which I've read out of order. That's a much thicker book and a very different style of book. But I think for the first one to launch the range, this is really good. I personally am not that interested in the setting of Mesopotamia, but considering I didn't immediately think, oh yeah, I'm going to love this, I really like the characters. Gilgamesh and his overactive libido. That's one of the things that's kind of unusual, is Doctor Who obviously doesn't have references to sex in it usually, doesn't have swearing, doesn't have particularly violence, is usually more tame. In these books, they're very much aimed at adults immediately, this being the first one. And Gilgamesh, this chap here, he just wants to have sex with everything that moves. There's references to some quite dark stuff like rape, about how the other nobles of Uruk do actually hate him because he essentially seduces and rapes and takes their women, and there's nothing they can do about it. It's really quite dark, actually. There's a lot of dark stuff in there, but I like that. I like that depth of character. And it makes that this character isn't particularly nice. He's not meant to be nice, really. It's sort of the dark history of the human race and where we come from. It's all there. I feel that the villain, the main villain, Ishtar, or what ends up being the Timewyrm, and sets up this Timewyrm tetralogy, the 4 books that this series starts off with, I think is a great villain, and I'm glad that at first when I was reading it and the Doctor rejects the secondary console room and its circuits, I thought that was a really lame way to end this villain. I'm glad that only 10 pages later, oh no, he didn't. That doesn't kill Ishtar, that doesn't kill Kotaka or the Timewyrm as they are later referenced. I'm glad that the character has come back and is actually the main villain, seemingly going forward into these next 3 books that I will be reading. I felt that the people of Anu and their technological advancement was a nice back setting to, obviously, ancient Mesopotamia, which is obviously a far less technologically advanced civilization. I always like that sort of blending. The sort of pseudo-historical stories of the TV series are always incredibly interesting to me. Things like The Visitation from Peter Davison's times are one of my favourites. So that sort of thing I'm always a fan of. I really feel like this is a great book to start off this series with, and I can see why the sales of this one probably was quite high when they started off, and puts us on good foot to go into the next book, which will be Timewyrm Exodus by Terrance Dicks. Uncle Terry, if anyone's familiar with Doctor Who at all, everyone loves Terrance Dicks because he's fantastic. He wrote so much Doctor Who, he was the script editor from 1969 to 1974, and continued contributing to the show all the way through. So he's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to reading that one. You all obviously have to wait for my feelings on that book, because I've got to read it first. However, if I was to give, I know out of 10 scores are a little bit, I don't know, cliche, but if I was to give Timewyrm Genesys by John Peel an out of 10 score, I would give it an 8 out of 10. So there we are. Thank you for watching another Jarvis in the TARDIS video, and I will be back soon with the next in the series of this look at the Virgin New Adventures with Timewyrm Exodus by Terrance Dicks. As always, thanks for watching.